Jake Morrison pressed his small hands against the thick glass window and stared out at the stars. The 8-year-old boy had seen this view 1,000 times before, but it still made him smile. Luna Colony 7 was his home, built deep inside the moon's surface, where his family had lived for 3 years now. "Jake, don't wander too far," his sister Katie called from across the observation deck. She was 12 and always acted like she was in charge when their parents worked the night shift. Katie sat at one of the metal tables, doing her homework on a tablet computer. The observation deck was the biggest room in the colony. It had real windows that showed the black space outside, filled with tiny white stars. During Earthrise, Jake could see his home planet rising over the moon's rocky surface like a blue and green marble. His father had told him that millions of people lived down there, but it was hard to believe when Earth looked so small from here. Jake walked around the empty room, his soft shoes making quiet sounds on the metal floor. Most of the colony's 200 people were either working or sleeping. The miners worked in shifts around the clock, digging valuable metals from deep inside the moon. His parents, Ben and Carol Morrison, operated the big drilling machines that could cut through solid rock. The boy stopped in front of a wall display that showed news from Earth. The screen talked about something called the Zephyrian Empire. These were aliens who had made contact with humans 5 years ago. Jake had been too young to remember first contact, but everyone still talked about it. The Zephyrians were tall creatures with bodies that looked like they were made of blue crystal. They had 4 arms and stood nearly 8 feet tall. Their faces had no nose or mouth like humans, just glowing eyes that changed color when they spoke through special devices. The Zephyrian diplomatic ship will arrive at Luna Colony 7 tomorrow morning, the news reporter said. This marks the first official visit by the Zephyrian Empire to any human settlement outside of Earth. Jake felt excited. He had never seen real aliens before, only pictures and videos. His teacher, Mrs. Baker, had told the class that the Zephyrians were very advanced and had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. They had technology that humans could barely understand. "Katie, did you hear that?" Jake ran back to his sister. "The aliens are coming here tomorrow." Katie looked up from her homework and rolled her eyes. "Yeah, I heard. Mom and Dad have been worried about it all week. They had to clean the whole mining section and write reports about everything we do here." "Why are they worried?" Jake asked. "The aliens are supposed to be friendly, right?" "I guess," Katie said, but she didn't sound sure. "Dad says they act like they're better than humans. Like we're just children who don't know anything." Jake thought about this. He didn't like when adults treated him like he was stupid just because he was young. Maybe the aliens were like that too. The next morning came quickly. Jake woke up in his small bedroom and got dressed in his best clothes. His mother had told him to look nice for the alien visitors. The whole colony felt different today. People spoke in quiet voices and walked faster than usual. Colony Administrator Lisa Carter had called a meeting in the main hall. Jake sat with his family near the back while Lisa explained the rules for today. The Zephyrians were coming to inspect the mining operation and see how humans lived on the moon. Remember, these beings represent a civilization far older and more advanced than ours, Lisa said. We must show them respect and prove that humans deserve our place in the galaxy. Jake didn't understand why humans had to prove anything. This was their colony, built with human hands and human machines. But he stayed quiet and listened. At exactly 10 o'clock, the colony's sensors detected the approaching Zephyrian ships. Jake watched on the main display as 3 sleek vessels landed on the moon's surface near the colony entrance. The ships looked nothing like human spacecraft. They were smooth and curved, like giant teardrops made of silver metal. The airlock cycled, and the aliens entered the colony. Commander Vex High stepped through first, and Jake gasped. The alien was even taller than he had imagined, with crystal skin that sparkled blue and purple under the artificial lights. Behind him came 4 other Zephyrians, all wearing elaborate armor and carrying weapons that hummed with energy. Vex High's eyes glowed bright red as he looked around the main hall. When he spoke, his voice came through a small device attached to his chest. The sound was cold and mechanical. "I am Commander Vex High of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet," he announced. "Your species has been granted probationary status within our sphere of influence. We are here to determine if humans are capable of following proper civilized behavior." Lisa Carter stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Welcome to Luna Colony 7, Commander. We are honored by your visit." Vex High did not return the greeting. Instead, he walked past Lisa like she wasn't important. His glowing eyes examined everything: the walls, the equipment, the people. When his gaze fell on Jake's family, the boy felt a chill run down his spine. "Your mining quotas are insufficient," Vex High declared after looking at some reports. "Zephyrian colonies produce 3 times this amount with half the personnel." "We're still learning, Commander," Lisa said carefully. "Human technology is not as advanced as yours. We do our best with what we have." "Excuses," Vex High replied. "The Zephyrian Empire does not accept failure. If your species cannot meet basic standards, perhaps probationary status was a mistake." Jake saw his father's hands clench into fists. Ben Morrison had worked hard to help build this colony. It wasn't fair for the alien to say they were failures. The inspection continued through the morning. Vex High found fault with everything he saw. The living quarters were too small. The equipment was primitive. The humans moved too slowly and talked too much. With each criticism, Jake noticed the adults getting more angry and frustrated. During lunch break, the Zephyrians set up a display of their weapons and technology in the main hall. They arranged the items on special stands, showing off advanced tools that could cut through any material or communicate across vast distances of space. Jake couldn't help himself. While the adults talked in another room, he snuck closer to look at the alien equipment. Everything was so different from human technology. The weapons didn't have triggers or buttons. Instead, they seemed to respond to touch or thought. One device caught his attention. It looked like a sword made of pure light, contained in a crystal handle. Jake had never seen anything so beautiful. He reached out carefully, just wanting to touch the crystal dot. His small hand bumped against the display stand. The stand wobbled and fell over with a loud crash. The light sword clattered across the metal floor, its glow flickering and dying. Commander Vex High appeared in the doorway instantly. His eyes blazed bright red with anger when he saw Jake standing near his fallen weapon. "Primitive child," Vex High roared. "You dare to touch the sacred blade of a Zephyrian commander." Jake backed away, frightened by the alien's fury. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "Silence." Vex High strode forward, his forearms reaching for the fallen weapon. "Your species knows nothing of respect or honor." Lisa Carter and Jake's parents came running at the sound of the commotion. "Commander, please," Lisa said. "He's just a child. He meant no harm." "A child who represents the careless nature of your entire race," Vex High replied. He picked up his weapon and activated it. The blade of pure energy sprang to life, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Jake's mother, Carol, stepped protectively in front of her son. "Please, he's learned his lesson. It won't happen again." But Vex High was beyond reason. In his culture, touching another warrior's weapon was an insult that demanded punishment. He saw the frightened human child and felt only contempt for this weak, primitive species. "Perhaps a lesson is needed," he said coldly, "so that humans understand the consequences of disrespecting their betters." Before anyone could react, HFY raised his energy blade and brought it down in one swift motion. Jake Morrison died instantly, his body falling to the cold metal floor of the colony he had called home. The observation deck fell silent except for Carol Morrison's screams. Ben Morrison caught his wife as she collapsed, both parents staring in horror at their son's lifeless form. HFY deactivated his weapon and turned to face the shocked humans. "Let this be a lesson in proper respect," he announced calmly. "The Zephyrian Empire will not tolerate such behavior from inferior species." Within an hour, the alien delegation had departed Luna Colony 7. They left behind a colony in mourning and a family destroyed by grief. But they also left behind something else. The spark that would ignite humanity's fury across the galaxy. The news of Jake Morrison's murder reached Earth within 6 hours. The video played again on the massive screen in the United Earth Council chamber. President Helen Ross watched in silence as Commander HFY raised his energy blade and struck down 8-year-old Jake Morrison. She had seen the footage 50 times in the past 12 hours, but it still made her hands shake with rage. Around the oval table, the leaders of Earth's nations sat in stunned silence. The footage had arrived from Luna Colony 7 at 3 in the morning, Earth time. By sunrise, every news network on the planet was broadcasting the murder of an innocent child by an alien commander. The riots have spread to every major city, reported Secretary of Defense Robert Kim. New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Delhi. People are demanding war. The Zephyrian embassy in Geneva had to be evacuated after protesters tried to burn it down. President Ross turned away from the screen. She was 55 years old and had spent her entire political career working for peace. She had been one of the strongest supporters of the first contact protocols with the Zephyrian Empire. Now she felt like a fool. "Have we heard anything from the Zephyrian government?" she asked. Foreign Minister Elena Santos shook her head. "Nothing official. Their ambassador left Earth on the first transport ship this morning. Before he departed, he said the incident was regrettable, but necessary to maintain proper discipline." The room erupted in angry voices. President Ross slammed her hand on the table to restore order. "What about our military response capabilities?" she asked quietly. This question brought an uncomfortable silence. Everyone knew the truth. Earth's Space Navy consisted of 12 patrol vessels and 30 cargo ships converted for military use. The Zephyrian Empire commanded fleets of thousands of advanced warships. In a direct conflict, humanity would be destroyed within days. "Ma'am," spoke up Admiral Jack Stone from the far end of the table, "I need to brief you on something that's been classified at the highest levels." President Ross looked at the Admiral with surprise. Jack Stone was a quiet man in his 60s who rarely spoke during council meetings. He had served in the Earth Defense Force since its creation, but most people considered him just another bureaucrat. "What kind of briefing, Admiral?" "Project Prometheus," he said simply. The room fell silent. Even the senior council members had puzzled expressions. President Ross had never heard of any Project Prometheus. "Admiral." Stone stood up and walked to the secure terminal at the side of the room. He entered a long code and pressed his palm against a scanner. The main display screen changed to show a classified document marked with the highest security ratings. "For the past 15 years, since first contact with the Zephyrians, we have been preparing for this day," he said calmly. "Not all of us believed that peaceful coexistence would last forever." The screen showed technical drawings of spacecraft that looked nothing like Earth's current fleet. These ships were sleek and deadly, incorporating design elements that appeared almost alien in nature. "How is this possible?" President Ross demanded. "Where did this technology come from?" "We've been collecting it piece by piece," Admiral Stone explained. "Every time a Zephyrian ship visited Earth, We scanned it completely. Every piece of equipment they brought, we studied and copied. Every diplomatic gift they gave us, we took apart to understand how it worked. Dr. Susan Blake, the Council's science advisor, leaned forward with interest. Jack, are you saying we've been reverse engineering alien technology without their knowledge? Not just reverse engineering, the Admiral replied. We've been improving it. Zephyrian technology is advanced, but it's also thousands of years old. Their designs haven't changed much because they believe they've achieved perfection. Human. Engineers look at their work and see dozens of ways to make it better. The display changed to show video footage of a massive underground facility. Hundreds of workers moved between assembly lines where sleek warships were being constructed. The scene looked like something from a science fiction movie. Where is this? President Ross asked. Luna Colony 12, Admiral Stone replied. The mining operation that nobody talks about. We've been building ships there for 8 years. The facility is completely hidden from satellite scans, built inside an old crater on the far side of the moon. Foreign Minister Santos stared at the screen in amazement. How many ships do we have? As of this morning, 237 combat vessels are ready for deployment. Another 150 will be completed within the next month. The room erupted in excited conversation. President Ross held up her hand for silence, but her mind was racing. If what Admiral Stone said was true, humanity wasn't as helpless as everyone believed. What about crew training? She asked. Our people don't know how to operate advanced alien technology. They've been training in secret for years, Admiral Stone replied. We recruited the best pilots, engineers, and soldiers from every nation. They've been living on hidden bases, learning to fight with weapons the Zephyrians don't even know we possess. Dr. Blake looked skeptical. Even with advanced ships, we're still vastly outnumbered. The Zephyrian Empire has thousands of worlds and millions of soldiers. Admiral Stone smiled for the first time during the meeting. Numbers aren't everything, Doctor. The Zephyrians have been the dominant power in this part of the galaxy for so long that they've forgotten how to fight a real war. They're used to intimidating primitive species into submission. They've never faced an enemy that fights back with equal technology and superior tactics. What do you mean by superior tactics? President Ross asked. The Zephyrians are warriors, but they fight with honor and tradition, Admiral Stone explained. They announce their attacks, they fight in formation, they follow ancient battle rules that haven't changed in centuries. Humans have spent our entire history fighting each other. We know every dirty trick, every sneaky strategy, every way to win a war that civilization has ever invented. The president thought about this. Humanity had indeed perfected the art of warfare through thousands of years of constant conflict. World wars, civil wars, guerrilla campaigns, terrorist attacks, cyber warfare. Humans had tried every possible way to hurt each other. There's something else, Admiral Stone continued. Our intelligence networks have been active throughout Zephorian space. We know the locations of their major military bases, supply lines, and command centers. We've been preparing target lists for 15 years. The display changed again to show star maps marked with red dots. Hundreds of them spread across dozens of star systems. We can hurt them badly, the Admiral said quietly, but only if we act fast and hit them before they realize what's happening. At that moment, an aide burst into the council chamber. Ma'am, urgent message from the Zephyrian Empire. The communication came through the main display. Emperor Kethmer himself appeared. On screen, his crystal body gleaming with purple and gold highlights. Behind him stood rows of Zephyrian military commanders. Humans of Earth, the Emperor began, his mechanical voice echoing through the chamber. The incident at your lunar colony was regrettable but necessary. Your species has shown disrespect for Zephyrian authority and tradition. President Ross felt her anger rising, but she remained silent. To prevent further such incidents, the Zephyrian Empire requires the following tribute, the Emperor continued. You will surrender 3 of your colony worlds to direct Zephyrian control. You will provide 10,000 human workers for our mining operations. You will reduce your military forces to ceremonial units only. The demands were outrageous. The 3 colonies the Emperor named housed nearly 2 million people. The workers he demanded would essentially be slaves. You have 72 hours to comply with these reasonable terms, Emperor Kethmer concluded. Failure to do so will result in the complete destruction of your species. Your probationary status is hereby revoked. Submit or face annihilation. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in silence. President Ross stood up slowly. She thought about Jake Morrison, an innocent 8-year-old boy who had died simply because he was curious about alien technology. She thought about the millions of humans living on the colonies the Zephyrians wanted to claim. She thought about her own children and grandchildren, and what kind of galaxy they would inherit. Admiral Stone, she said in a voice that carried the authority of the entire human race. How quickly can your ships be ready for combat? They're ready now, ma'am, he replied. We've been waiting for this day for 15 years. Then send this message to Emperor Kethmer, President Ross said, her eyes hard as steel. Tell him that humanity declines his generous offer. Tell him that Jake Morrison was just a little boy who liked to look at the stars. And tell him that he's about to learn why humans spent 10,000 years fighting each other. She paused, thinking about the child's face in the video footage. Tell him we're coming for him. Within 6 hours, every human military base on Earth and throughout the colonies received the same message. Condition read. All units deploy immediately. Rules of engagement. Total war. No prisoners, no mercy, no quarter given. The Zephyrian Empire had awakened something that had been sleeping in human hearts for thousands of years. They were about to discover that the most dangerous predator in the galaxy wasn't a warrior race with crystal armor and energy weapons. It was a species that had learned to fight by fighting itself. Captain Ryan Bell stood on the bridge of the EDS Retribution and watched the stars shift around his ship. The vessel was moving through hyperspace at speeds that would have been impossible just months ago. Every piece of technology on board had been stolen from the Zephyrians and made better by human engineers. Ryan was 32 years old and had been training for this mission for 6 years. He had been selected from thousands of candidates to command humanity's first strike against the Zephyrian Empire. Behind him on the bridge, 24 crew members worked at stations that combined alien technology with human improvements. Captain, we'll reach Kepler Station in 10 minutes, reported Lieutenant Amy Foster from the navigation station. She was young, only 25, but she had spent 3 years learning to operate Zephyrian hyperspace drives. Signal the fleet, Ryan ordered. All ships prepare for combat emergence. Through the main view screen, Ryan could see the other 49 ships of Strike Force, Alpha. Each vessel carried a crew trained in secret facilities on the far side of the moon. These men and women had practiced this mission countless times. In simulation. Now they would do it for real. The target was Kepler Station, a major Zephyrian military outpost located at the edge of their territory. Intelligence reports said the station housed over 10,000 Zephyrian soldiers and served as a supply depot for their frontier fleets. More importantly, Commander Vex High had been transferred there after his visit to Luna Colony 7. Remember what we're fighting for, Ryan announced over the ship's communication system. Every person on this ship has seen the video of Jake Morrison's murder. That little boy died because the Zephyrians think humans are too weak to fight back. Today, we prove them wrong. The crew members at their stations nodded grimly. Every human in the fleet had volunteered for this mission after seeing the footage from Luna Colony 7. They were fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters, people who understood that Jake Morrison could have been any human child. 30 seconds to emergence, Lieutenant Foster reported. Ryan activated his personal display and looked at the tactical information one more time. Kepler Station was heavily defended with energy shields, plasma cannons, and a garrison fleet of 60 Zephyrian warships. Under normal circumstances, it would take hundreds of ships to capture such a target, but these weren't normal circumstances. All ships emerge from hyperspace in 3, 2, 1, mark. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Weapons already charged and targeting systems locked onto Zephyrian positions. The element of surprise was complete. The Zephyrian defenders had been expecting either surrender or no response at all from the primitive humans. Commander Vex-High was in the station's command center when the alerts began screaming. His forearms moved quickly across control surfaces as he tried to understand what was happening. Report. He barked at his subordinates. Unknown ships emerging from hyperspace, replied Sub-Commander Vekval. Configuration does not match any known species in our databases. Vex-High looked at the tactical display and felt a chill of confusion. The ships were clearly built using Zephyrian technology, but their designs were wrong somehow. They were sleeker, faster looking, with weapon systems that didn't appear in any Zephyrian military manual. How many vessels? He demanded. 50 combat ships, all destroyer class or larger, Vekval reported. They're moving into attack formation. 50 ships? Vex-High's eyes blazed with anger. What species dares to attack a Zephyrian military installation with only 50 ships? His answer came when the human fleet opened fire. The Retribution's main guns fired first, sending beams of concentrated energy into the Zephyrian defensive grid. The shots were perfectly aimed, striking the most critical shield generators with surgical precision. Within seconds, entire sections of Kepler Station's defenses went dark. Impossible, Vex-High whispered. Our shields are impenetrable. But the human weapons weren't using standard Zephyrian energy frequencies. Dr. Susan Blake's research teams had discovered that Zephyrian shields were designed to stop their own weapons. The humans had modified the energy output to frequencies that passed right through the defensive barriers. The battle became a massacre within minutes. Zephyrian ships tried to return fire, but their weapons couldn't penetrate the human shields. The humans had taken Zephyrian defensive technology and layered it in ways the original designers had never imagined. Captain Ryan Bell watched the enemy fleet crumble before his guns. Target their command ship, he ordered. I want Vex-High alive. Retribution's weapons focused on the largest Zephyrian vessel, systematically destroying its engines and weapons while leaving the crew compartments intact. The alien ship spun helplessly in space, venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Sir, the station is requesting permission to surrender, reported Communications Officer Dan Miller. Denied, Ryan replied coldly. Continue firing. This wasn't a war of conquest. This was vengeance. The human fleet moved through the Zephyrian defenses like sharks through a school of fish. Every shot was perfectly aimed, every maneuver calculated for maximum destruction. The aliens had never faced an enemy that combined their own technology with human tactical thinking. Zephyrian military doctrine was based on honor and tradition. They announced their attacks, fought in formation, and followed rules that had been unchanged for thousands of years. The humans threw out every rule and fought like the predators they had always been. Station defenses are down, Lieutenant Foster reported. Hull breaches on all levels. Estimated enemy casualties at 60% and rising. Ryan felt no satisfaction at the numbers. Every dead Zephyrian was one less alien who might threaten human children in the future. Begin boarding operations, he commanded. I want every surviving officer, brought to the main hangar bay. The boarding parties used captured Zephyrian transport technology to move directly through the station's damaged hull. Human soldiers in advanced armor stormed through corridors that were filled with smoke and debris. The few Zephyrians who tried to resist were killed instantly. Commander Vex High was found in his command center, wounded but alive. The human soldiers dragged him through the destroyed station to where Captain Ryan Bell waited in the main hangar bay. Ryan looked at the alien who had murdered Jake Morrison. Vex High's crystal body was cracked and dulled with pain, his forearms bound with human restraints. The proud commander who had killed a child to teach humans about respect now knelt before his victims. "Do you remember Jake Morrison?" Ryan asked quietly. Vex High's eyes flickered with confusion. "The human child who dared to touch a warrior's weapon?" "The 8-year-old boy who was curious about your pretty sword," Ryan corrected. "The little boy who said he was sorry before you murdered him." Understanding dawned in the alien's glowing eyes. "You are here for revenge." "Justice," Ryan replied. He drew his sidearm, a human-designed weapon that used Zephyrian energy technology. Jake Morrison was innocent. He was a child who had never hurt anyone in his short life. You killed him to prove a point about respect. Vex High tried to speak, but Ryan continued. "Now I'm going to kill you to prove a point about consequences." The execution was broadcast live to every Zephyrian world in the Empire. Captain Ryan Bell made sure the aliens could see Commander Vex High's face as the energy beam struck him down. The message was simple and clear. Humanity was no longer the peaceful species that sought friendship among the stars. "This is Captain Ryan Bell of the Earth Defense Ship Retribution," he announced to the cameras. "Commander Vex High murdered an innocent human child named Jake Morrison. Today, justice has been served. Let every Zephyrian commander know that human children are not to be harmed. Let your empire understand that we are not the weak species you believed us to be." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "We are coming for all of you." The broadcast ended, but the message spread across the galaxy within hours. The Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled this sector of space for millennia, suddenly faced an enemy they had never encountered before. Humans who had nothing left to lose. Strike Force Alpha spent 6 hours destroying everything of value at Kepler Station. They captured weapons, technology, and intelligence data that would help future human operations. Then they reduced the station to floating debris and departed for their next target. Behind them, they left a message burned into the station's hull in letters 50 feet tall. "Remember Jake Morrison." News of the Kepler Station massacre reached the Zephyrian capital within 12 hours. For the first time in their recorded history, the proud warrior race felt something they had never experienced: fear of another species. Emperor Kethmer stood in his crystal palace and watched the reports flooding in from the frontier. The humans hadn't just attacked a military target. They had destroyed it completely, killed every defender, and executed a high-ranking commander. The species he had dismissed as primitive had revealed capabilities that matched or exceeded Zephyrian technology. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his military advisors. "Our intelligence said the humans possessed only a few dozen primitive vessels. The ships they used were clearly built with our technology," reported Fleet Commander Zelkan. "But their designs were modified in ways we don't understand. Their weapons passed through our shields as if they didn't exist." General Pete Collins stood in the command center of the massive starship Vengeance and watched the tactical display show another Zephyrian world burning. It had been 8 months since the attack on Kepler Station, and the war had spread across half the galaxy. Pete was 45 years old and had spent his entire military career preparing for this moment. He commanded the Earth Liberation Fleet, now grown to over 1,000 ships. What had started as a single strike force had become an unstoppable war machine that consumed everything in its path. General, we've received surrender requests from 3 more Zephyrian colonies, reported Colonel Jane Harris from the communication station. They're offering to provide supplies and intelligence in exchange for protection. Pete looked at the requests without emotion. The pattern had become familiar over the past few months. As human forces advanced deeper into Zephyrian space, entire worlds abandoned their allegiance to the Empire. The proud warrior race was learning that fear was more powerful than loyalty. Standard response, Pete ordered. Full evacuation of all military personnel and government officials. Any resistance will result in orbital bombardment. The humans weren't interested in conquest or occupation. They wanted complete destruction of Zephyrian military power. Every captured world had its defenses demolished, its weapons factories destroyed, and its warrior caste either killed or exiled to distant systems. Sir, incoming message from Earth Command, announced Lieutenant Chris Taylor. Dr. Blake wants to update you on the new weapons project. Pete activated his private communication channel. Dr. Susan Blake appeared on his screen, her face showing the exhaustion of someone who had been working 18-hour days for months. General, we've completed testing on the nanobotic weapons. She said without greeting, they're ready for deployment. Pete felt a grim satisfaction. The nanobots were Dr. Blake's latest creation, designed specifically to target Zephyrian biology. The microscopic machines would consume the crystal compounds that made up Zephyrian exoskeletons, causing their bodies to literally dissolve. How effective are they? Pete asked. 100% lethal within 48 hours, Dr. Blake replied. We've tested them on captured prisoners. The process is extremely painful and leaves no survivors. Pete thought about Jake Morrison, the 8-year-old boy whose death had started this war. The child had died quickly, with one strike from an energy blade. The Zephyrians would not be so fortunate. Begin production immediately, he ordered. I want enough nanobots to sterilize 50 worlds. Dr. Blake nodded and ended the transmission. Pete turned back to the tactical display, where new reports were coming in from across the war zone. The Zephyrian Empire had been unprepared for the type of conflict humans brought to their worlds. For thousands of years, they had fought wars according to ancient traditions. Battles were formal affairs with rules about targeting civilians, preserving infrastructure, and treating prisoners with honor. Humans ignored every rule of civilized warfare. Captain Sarah North commanded the stealth ship Phantom, one of a new class of vessels designed for psychological warfare. Her mission was simple: find Zephyrian breeding worlds and leave behind messages that would terrorize the population. Sarah and her crew had just completed their latest operation on Zephyr 7, a world where young Zephyrians were raised and educated. The planet had no military value, but it was psychologically important to the Empire. Message delivered, Captain, reported Ensign Mark Davis from the communication station. Every major city now has our broadcast towers installed. Sarah smiled coldly. The towers would transmit a simple message every hour for the next 10 years. Remember Jake Morrison. Human children are precious. Zephyrian children are not. The Phantom slipped away from Zephyr 7 without being detected. By the time this Zephyrian authorities discovered the towers, the psychological damage would already be done. Millions of young Zephyrians would grow up hearing that message, learning to fear the species that could strike anywhere, anytime. Meanwhile, on Earth, the entire planet had transformed into a war machine. Every factory, every laboratory, every university had been converted to military production. Citizens worked around the clock to build weapons, ships, and ammunition for the growing human fleet. President Helen Ross stood in the Situation Room beneath the White House and reviewed the latest casualty reports. Human losses had been surprisingly light, fewer than 10,000 soldiers killed in 8 months of warfare. Zephyrian casualties were approaching 50 million. The disparity is remarkable, observed Secretary of Defense Robert Kim. Their technology is equal to ours, but their tactics are centuries behind. Ross nodded, but she felt no satisfaction in the numbers. Every human death was a tragedy, but every Zephyrian death was necessary justice for Jake Morrison and the safety of all human children. What's the status of the enemy alliances? She asked. Intelligence Director Lisa Park stepped forward with a data tablet. The Draconian Trade Federation has agreed to provide military support to the Zephyrians. They're mobilizing a fleet of 2,000 ships, and the Insectoid Swarm Collective also joining the alliance. Their hive ships are already moving toward the war zone. Ross considered this information. The humans had always known this war might expand beyond the Zephyrian Empire. Other alien species were watching to see if the upstart humans could be stopped before they became a threat to galactic stability. How do our numbers compare to the combined enemy forces? She asked. Admiral Jack Stone, now promoted to Supreme Military Commander, answered from his position at the strategy table. They'll outnumber us 3-1 when all their fleets combine. But numbers aren't everything. We have advantages they can't match. Explain. They're fighting to preserve their existing order, Admiral Stone said. We're fighting for the survival of our species and the memory of a murdered child. Their alliance is based on politics and fear. Our unity is based on rage and love. Ross understood the difference. The alien alliance was fragile, held together by mutual interest rather than shared purpose. If the humans could break that alliance, the war would become much easier. There's something else, Admiral Stone continued. Our intelligence networks have identified a weakness in their strategy. They're massing their fleets at 3 major staging areas before the final assault on human space. He activated the holographic display to show 3-star systems marked in red. If we can strike all 3 locations simultaneously, we can destroy their entire alliance fleet before they have a chance to coordinate. Ross studied the tactical display. It was an ambitious plan that would require splitting human forces across hundreds of light years. But if it worked, the war would be effectively over. How many ships would we need for this operation? She asked. Everything we have, Admiral Stone replied. Every combat vessel, every transport, every support ship. We'd be gambling our entire military on one massive battle. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If the plan failed, Earth would be defenseless against alien retaliation. Ross thought about Jake Morrison again. She pictured the little boy playing in Luna Colony 7, curious about the stars and excited to meet alien visitors. That innocent child had trusted the universe to be fair and kind. His trust had been betrayed by creatures who saw humans as inferior beings worthy only of contempt. Do it, she decided. Send everything we have. Show the galaxy what happens when someone hurts a human child. Admiral Stone nodded and began issuing orders. Within hours, every human ship in the galaxy would be moving toward the 3 target systems. It would be the largest space battle in galactic history. The alien commanders receiving intelligence about human fleet movements felt confident about their chances. They outnumbered the humans significantly and had the advantage of defensive positions. Their combined fleets represented the military might of civilizations that had ruled space for millennia. What they didn't understand was that humans had never learned to fight fair. While the aliens prepared for a traditional space battle with formations and tactics from their military academies, the humans were planning something entirely different. Dr. Blake's nanobotic weapons were already in position, hidden inside captured Zephyrian supply ships that had been secretly replaced with human duplicates months earlier. When the alien fleets gathered for their final assault, they would find death waiting for them in their own supply lines. Captain Sarah North's psychological warfare had also taken its toll. Intercepted communications showed growing fear and doubt among alien crews. Reports of human atrocities had spread throughout their ranks, causing some units to refuse orders and others to desert entirely. Most importantly, the humans had learned to coordinate their attacks with a precision that the alien alliance couldn't match. While 3 different species tried to work together despite cultural differences and competing interests, humanity fought with the unified purpose of a species that had finally found something worth dying for. The battle would decide the fate of the galaxy. Either the alien alliance would succeed in stopping human expansion, or humanity would become the dominant force in this region of space. Either way, Jake Morrison would be remembered across the stars as the child whose death changed the universe forever. 2 years after Jake Morrison's death, the crystal spires of Zephyr Prime burned under human orbital bombardment. Admiral Jack Stone stood on the bridge of his flagship, Vengeance, and watched the proud capital of the Zephyrian Empire crumble beneath his guns. The final battle had lasted 3 days. The Alien Alliance fleet of 6,000 ships had been destroyed in the opening hours, when Dr. Blake's nanobotic weapons activated inside their supply vessels. The microscopic machines had spread through the alien fleets like a plague, dissolving Zephyrian exoskeletons and poisoning draconian blood systems. The insectoid swarm collective had tried to retreat when they saw their allies dying, but Captain Sarah North's stealth squadrons had been waiting. The human ships emerged from hyperspace behind the fleeing insects and destroyed them completely. No alien vessel escaped to carry word of the defeat back to their home worlds. Now the human fleet hung in orbit above the Zephyrian homeworld like vultures above a dying animal. The planet's defensive shields had fallen 6 hours ago. Its military bases were smoking ruins. The once mighty empire that had ruled this sector of space for thousands of years was finished. Admiral Stone activated a planetary communication system. His message would be broadcast to every surviving Zephyrian on the surface below. "I am Admiral Jack Stone of the Human Dominion Fleet," he announced. "Your empire is defeated. Your fleets are destroyed. Your allies have abandoned you. Emperor Kethmer will surrender unconditionally, or we will reduce this world to ash and bone." The response came within minutes. Emperor Kethmer appeared on the communication screen, his crystal body cracked and dulled with defeat. The proud ruler who had demanded tribute from humanity now knelt in the ruins of his palace. "We surrender," he said simply. "Spare my people." "Admiral." Stone felt no satisfaction at the alien submission. Too many humans had died to bring this moment about. Too many families had been destroyed by a war that should never have happened. "You will be brought aboard my ship," he told the Emperor, "along with every surviving member of your government and military command. The terms of surrender are not negotiable." President Helen Ross arrived at Zephyr Prime aboard the diplomatic vessel New Hope 3 days later. She had insisted on personally overseeing the surrender ceremony, despite the security risks. This moment belonged to Jake Morrison and his family, and she would see it through to the end. The ceremony took place in the ruins of the Imperial Palace. Human soldiers in advanced armor surrounded the kneeling Zephyrian leaders, while news cameras broadcast the event across the galaxy. President Ross walked slowly among the defeated aliens, her eyes cold as winter stars. "2 years ago, your commander murdered a human child named Jake Morrison," she began. "An 8-year-old boy whose only crime was curiosity about your weapons. Today, your empire pays the price for that murder." Emperor Kethmer looked up at the human leader with desperate eyes. "It was one commander's mistake," he pleaded. "Vex High acted without authorization. My people should not suffer for his actions." "Your people cheered when they heard about Jake's death," President Ross replied. "Your news broadcasts called it a lesson in proper respect for superior beings. Your government endorsed the murder of an innocent child. She gestured to the human soldiers surrounding them. These men and women have traveled across the galaxy to deliver justice. Not just for Jake Morrison, but for every human child who might have faced the same fate if we had shown weakness. The terms of surrender were read aloud by General Pete Collins. The Zephyrian Empire would be dissolved immediately. All military vessels and weapons would be surrendered to human forces. Zephyrian technology would be shared freely with humanity. But the most important term came last. All Zephyrian children will be educated in human schools, General Collins announced. They will learn human history, human values, and human respect for life. They will be taught the story of Jake Morrison and understand why their empire fell. Emperor Kethmer's crystal body flickered with shock. You would steal our children's culture? We would give your children something your culture lacks, President Ross replied. The understanding that all intelligent life has value. That curiosity should be encouraged, not punished. That children should be protected, not murdered for touching the wrong object. The Emperor bowed his head in defeat. Around the galaxy, other alien civilizations watched the ceremony and began to understand a terrible truth. Humanity had never been the primitive species seeking acceptance among the stars. They had been apex predators, hiding their true nature. Until provoked Dr. Susan Blake stood in her laboratory aboard the research ship Discovery and watched the final statistics scroll across her screens. 57 worlds conquered. 4 million alien military personnel dead. 12 entire fleets destroyed. The most advanced civilization in this sector of space reduced to a vassal state in less than 2 years. She thought about the weapons she had created for this war. The nanobots that dissolved alien bodies. The psychological warfare programs that drove enemy soldiers to madness. The biological agents designed to target specific alien physiologies. Humanity had always possessed the knowledge to create such horrors. They had simply chosen not to use it against each other. The Zephyrians had made the mistake of giving humans a target that united every faction, every nation, every person on Earth and beyond. 3 months later, the first Zephyrian children arrived at human schools throughout the galaxy. They were frightened and confused, separated from their families, and forced to learn an alien language and culture. Katie Morrison, now 16 years old, volunteered to help teach the young Zephyrians at Luna Colony 7. She stood in the same observation deck where her brother had died and looked at a class of crystal-skinned children who barely reached her waist. Today we're going to learn about someone very important, she told them gently. His name was Jake Morrison, and he was my little brother. The Zephyrian children listened with wide, glowing eyes as Katie told them about an 8-year-old human boy who loved to look at the stars. She showed them pictures of Jake playing in the colony corridors, building models of spaceships, dreaming about meeting friendly aliens from distant worlds. Jake was curious about everything, Katie explained. He asked 1,000 questions every day. He wanted to understand how things worked and why people did the things they did. Most of all, he wanted to be friends with everyone he met. One of the young Zephyrians raised a small hand. What happened to Jake Morrison? Katie's voice grew quiet. He was murdered by one of your commanders because he accidentally touched something he shouldn't have. Jake said he was sorry, but Commander Vexhai killed him anyway. The classroom fell silent. The young aliens looked at each other with confusion and growing understanding. That's why your empire fell, Katie continued. Not because humans are stronger or smarter or better at war. Your empire fell because you hurt a child, and humans will never forgive anyone who hurts children. She walked to the window and pointed out at the stars. Every one of those lights is a sun with planets around it. Some of those planets have children playing and learning and growing up. Human children now protect all of them. We make sure no One ever hurts another, Jake Morrison. The lesson continued for an hour. By the end, several of the young Zephyrians were crying crystal tears. They were beginning to understand that their proud warrior culture had produced monsters, not heroes. Years passed. The human dominion expanded across the galaxy, bringing peace through strength and the memory of a murdered child. Other civilizations learned to seek Earth's approval before taking any military action, terrified of awakening the sleeping giant again. On Luna Colony 7, a simple memorial stood in the observation deck where Jake Morrison had died. Visitors from hundreds of worlds came to see the small plaque that read, "Jake Morrison, the child who taught the galaxy to fear humanity." Katie Morrison, now a captain in the Dominion fleet, often brought her own children to visit their uncle's memorial. She would tell them the same story she told the Zephyrian students, about a little boy who loved the stars and died because he was curious. Uncle Jake never got to grow up, she would say. He never got to explore the galaxy or make alien friends, or have children of his own. But his death made sure that no other child would suffer the same fate. The galaxy was at peace now, but it was a peace built on the memory of violence. Every alien leader knew the story of Jake Morrison. Every military commander understood the consequences of harming human children. Every species in the Dominion had learned to respect the small, seemingly weak creatures who had conquered half the galaxy in the name of one dead boy. President Helen Ross, now in her 70s, stood in the same council chamber where she had first seen the video of Jake's murder. The room had been redecorated many times over the years, but she still remembered that terrible day when everything changed. A new generation of human leaders was taking over the Dominion. Young men and women who had grown up during the war and understood both its necessity and its cost. They would carry forward the lesson that Jake Morrison had taught the universe, that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the price. The boy who had died reaching for an alien sword had become the foundation of humanity's galactic empire.